The first time I watched the trailer for Soul, I was really excited. I was expecting a Pixar film about music and jazz and how music moves and touches us. Coming off of a Carol and Tuesday Cowboy Bebop binge, I was eager for this kind of fanfare. That isn't what Soul provided though. I've already reviewed this movie though, and a review this is certainly not. I want instead to take time to really look at the messages and ideas Soul has, about the way that it talks about the struggle we face between life and labor. Soul is not about music. I thought it would be about music when I first saw the trailer, but I was completely wrong. The plot of the story features music. It is not about music in the slightest. Soul is about the struggle in a capitalist society to balance one's desire to be productive in accordance with capitalist ideas, to be profitable and to be constantly producing something of value, and the desire to live. So, life versus labor. Those may seem like extremely different things that may not come into conflict with each other. Life itself and simply working. I mean, you have to do work to survive. But the film shows us how much deeper that connection is than we even think it is. When Joe first arrives in the Great Before, he learns that it is a place where souls find their spark before they're born. What a spark is never actually defined. We're led to assume, as Joe does, that it's some kind of grand purpose, something that will dictate your life and path and what you must do, some grand destiny. But it's not. This is why Joe's mentee, 22, can't find their spark, so they can go to Earth. It's implied at the end of the film that this mistaken distinction between a spark and a purpose is common among mentors, so all of them are approaching the situation as, we have to find 22's grand destiny, when that's not really what they're supposed to be doing. And the weight of this pressure crushes 22. Later in the film, when we get a look inside their head, it's a storm of all these voices of people that they've been told to look up to, telling them how unlikable they are and how they have no purpose and no worth and no use. 22 is constantly told to conflate their worthiness to be on Earth with having some earth-shattering destiny or calling that they have to find. They're constantly told they don't have it, so they're reluctant to even try to go to Earth because deep down they don't believe they deserve it. They don't believe they deserve to live. They don't have a purpose great enough, so why bother? What happens with 22 makes me think a lot about how we treat artists and figures in our society. We think that some great thing they did or created is what defines them, and the greatness of that thing is what gives their lives meaning or impact or value. We make people demigods based on it and forget the person underneath. It also makes me think of the way that living in a capitalist society creates in us these similar feelings. Capitalism is a system that precariously hangs itself on the concept of ever-increasing profits. They have to go up forever, and this attitude affects every part of our lives. Our entire societies and the way that we're told to think about ourselves is manufactured to make us as profitable as possible. We romanticize making ourselves as profitable as possible at any cost. Minimal sleep, minimal eating, minimal social time, but maximum working hours, maximum grind, make money by any means necessary. Everything we do has to be in service of increasing our wealth. This is especially prevalent in Black culture, where historically there's always been an attitude of finding any way you can just to survive in this world. Finding your one talent and sticking to it in hopes of monetizing it because you don't have many other options. I doubt I need to explain the twisted origins of grind and work culture among communities of color, especially not in America, and the way that traditional ideas of laziness and such were constructed to punish slaves that weren't productive enough. But the image of the opposite of what we've discussed is beaten into us heavily. Old racist propaganda calling people of color lazy and depicting lazy people as literally disgusting characters, conjuring up images of fat and lazy idiots, people given the title of lazy and made to look as repulsive and be as repulsive as possible. And the closer you are to this manufactured image of laziness, the more pressure you feel to grind constantly to prove you're better. Weight, race, style, etc. are all constructed metrics of how lazy someone is. When the default image of a lazy person is overweight or darker skinned or made to look poor, you internalize that, even though historically we know that's not true. Especially in a world where access to healthy food, affordable quality clothing, hygiene products, and other essentials is intentionally made difficult by rich upper-class people trying to make more money by increasing prices and decreasing wages. We're taught to hate laziness and lazy people, but the image of those people that we're given is just ourselves. and we internalize that heavily. I dread any moment, any minuscule second where I look or feel like this caricature of laziness and dirtiness. I hate doing nothing all day because it makes me feel lazy, which makes me feel dirty, and I hate feeling that way. I hate my weight because of so much propaganda telling me that people with my skin tone and my body type are lazy and dirty and ugly and stupid and all of these things. And I live in terror of fitting into these stereotypes for even a second, to the point that I'd rather tear my own skin off than let someone see me shirtless. That I feel anxiety anytime someone sees me relaxing. Anytime I feel like I've spent too much time doing something that isn't profitable, that doesn't make money or open doors or showcase a talent so I can monetize it later. 22 talks to Joe's barber, and he tells him that even though the job he has now wasn't his grand goal and it doesn't make as much money, it's just as satisfying because he gets to connect with people and help people in a different way. His fulfillment doesn't come from hard, difficult labor or massive amounts of profit or world-shattering achievements, but these little moments of connection he has. That's what makes him love his job. He doesn't need a massive salary to achieve some massive goal to be worthy of existing. He already is. He's just vibing. He's just enjoying it. In contrast, earlier in the film, Joe looks at his life and all the lack of achievement, and that's all he sees. His life has no meaning to him because he hasn't achieved something great enough in his eyes. And 22 has no value because they don't have any hobbies or talents that they can be great for. But then something else happens. The two sit down and just enjoy the sunlight and breathe. For a few moments, they let themselves just be alive for the sake of being alive. And that's enough. That's what gives 22 their spark. Sharing moments and passion and living just because we can. Because we have inherent value with no obligation to capital or capitalists. You don't have to work to become a CEO or a famous artist to have value. You don't have to work yourself into an early grave to have value. You are just valuable. That simple. And it's so sickening that we live in a society that praises self-destruction in the name of profit or clout. Van Gogh did not have to suffer and die so the world could look at a yellow painting. And he didn't suffer for it. Those paintings were not the accumulation of keto smoothies, early morning workouts, and grinding. It was someone enjoying life just because they wanted to, and sharing that with the world the way they knew how, and everyone else decided that the suffering he went through was required to have it, when it was the healing that produced the art and the impact. Heath Ledger's life had value before he was the Joker. Joe's life didn't lack value because he wasn't some massive jazz legend. It had value just because it was his life and he was there to enjoy it. You do not have to become some perfect angel to be deserving of self-love, affection, friendship, community, or anything else. You do not have to earn your right to exist, and no one will tell you otherwise. The fact that you simply exist day to day is enough. 22's spark didn't come from discovering the way that they would change the world forever, or a job with good insurance and high wages. It came from them just finding something that made them appreciate being alive at all. No strings attached. I am an essential worker. I'm also a student. I do this on top of my activism, but I hate letting myself do anything not tangibly productive for too long. I tweeted how I was shot in the face with crowd control rounds at a protest, but even though I had bruises all over my body and hadn't even cleaned the blood out of my mask, I still was at work the next day and working on YouTube stuff at night and doing class stuff and just trying to keep up with everything. After getting home late at night from closing, but I still went to work the next day, and I worked on YouTube stuff all night when I got home after closing, and I worked on school that morning, and then I worked, and I worked, and I worked until my brain literally couldn't take it anymore and shut down. I've worked through injury until I was so exhausted that I've had breakdowns. I've had severe PTSD episodes at work and just kept working, kept grinding, kept going, and I am killing myself doing it. For what? So I can be more profitable for labor I don't own and products I don't give a shit about? For some CEO to take the majority of what I generated with my own two hands anyway? I survived a year of global pandemic, extreme police violence, trauma, and more, all while doing all of these things. Yet a single moment to myself taking time to do nothing makes me feel so guilty it causes me to have a breakdown on its own. When have you earned the right to just live, to just be? Soul says you can't. You don't earn those moments, you're owed them. You deserve them just because. Capitalists will convince you that 600 is enough to make up for the economic impact of the last year. They'll convince you that you're happy while they work you into premature heart and health conditions. They will use your body up for all it's worth and then cast you aside and spit crumbs in your face and be pissed at you for not being grateful. Don't you think we deserve better? I do. Shit. I'm tired, and I'm tired of being tired, and I'm tired of being tired of being tired. Imagine how many things you could do, how many hobbies you'd have, what you'd learn just for the pleasure of learning, if we had the time, if we weren't struggling to make money, to make ends meet, if we weren't struggling to make money for someone else that gets extracted from our communities, that we aren't even being given our fair share of. Why is it a debate whether or not people deserve a living wage? As if people declared essential workers don't deserve enough money from that essential work to care for their families. Why is our value as human beings being determined by how much money our feet earn? In a society that forces us to earn our worth as humans, asserting your inherent value as something unquantifiable, inherent, asserting your humanity is a revolutionary act. This is the struggle. The fight between labor and money as a metric of your worth, placed on you without your consent by capitalists, and the inherent value that you have just because you're alive. Or is the fight between the concept of value entirely, of having to be valued in some capacity at all, and the realization that you don't have to have value. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to fulfill some need, you don't have to be important, you don't have to be anything. There is no inherent value unless you decide you want one for yourself. And even then, you are worthy of living a life you enjoy, regardless of what side you happen to fall on. That doesn't change. At the end of the movie, Joe finally gets to play on stage the way he's wanted for his entire life. And when it's not enough, Dorothea tells him a story about a fish who asks another fish where he can find the ocean. The fish says, "This is the ocean." And the first fish says, "No, this is water." Do what you will with that information. Joe decides that he doesn't know where his life is going, but that's okay because he's just going to live it. No needing a grand destiny to give him value or purpose. Just living is enough. Just appreciating being alive. I don't know. Marx probably has something smart to say about this, but I wrote this late at night after having a breakdown, so whatever. The things you work on do not have to make money for them to be valid or worthy ways to spend your time.